And we're live. Welcome everybody to our 6th episode of Community Chat, Meeting Community Where It's At. We'd like to welcome y'all to our 6th episode. I can't believe it's our 6th episode already. Community Chat is an opportunity for the Center for Community Engagement, alongside great campus partners, community partners, to share a little bit about the great work that's happening in our community, to share about topics and issues that matter to our students, that matter to our community members, and that are important for us to have conversations about. So we thank you for joining us today. This being our 6th episode, every episode up until now, viewership has climbed and climbed and climbed. We have thousands of viewers all around the country, all around the world, from my mother Mary in New Jersey to my cousin Ilda in Miami and everywhere in between. So we thank you for joining us today. All the thousands watching live and all the millions watching at home, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. I'm joined today by my wonderful co-host, Ava Burgos. Ava, would you like to introduce yourself and say a little bit about who you are?
Sure, yes. So hello, my name is Ava Burgos. I'm a junior at Gonzaga right now, and I'm studying psychology, and I'm also a member of our Undocumented Community Support Coalition and our Undocumented Community Support Group.
Thank you, Ava. For today's episode, we'll be having a conversation around the realities facing our undocumented communities, namely our students here on campus and our community members here in the greater Spokane region. Our panelists today join us as members of the Spokane community, members of the Gonzaga community, connected to this issue of undocumented status in a variety of different ways. But I'll turn it over to them so they can introduce themselves. If we could start with Dr. Zavala and then head over to Olga. Thank y'all for joining us.
Thank you, Anthony, for inviting me to be part of this. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Mariela Zavala, and I am an assistant professor of marketing at Gonzaga University. And this is my first year joining this community. This is my first year at Gonzaga, and so I'm very appreciative to have been invited to this meeting today and get to know more community members. And the way that I'm connected to this particular topic is very personally. So I grew up in Texas undocumented. Then when DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, was passed, I became DACA-mented, right? And then that allowed me to go to grad school, get my PhD. And I just finished my PhD in the spring of this year, 2020, and then came to Spokane and joined this community. And my current status is I'm a green card holder. This topic for me is very personal, and the experiences that students, undocumented and then documented students face, they're very close to me.
Thank you, Dr. Zavala. And Olga?
Thank you. My name is Olga Lucia Herrera, and I'm also very happy to have the opportunity to talk to connect to you guys and to connect with the students in Gonzaga. Sometimes I forget that even at Gonzaga, there would be undocumented students. I worked in a little narrow area of the city, and I'll tell you more about that. And so I hadn't realized this, so it's excellent to see that there are more people involved, and I would love to continue the connection. I came to my story about Spokane is long. I came to Spokane 13, 14 years ago, and to the United States 25. I'm a US citizen, and I will always be a US citizen. And I learned about immigration through the years from a completely different lens, where I didn't understand immigration at all, very ignorant about it, until now, where I definitely think it's a humanitarian crisis, and something I've found a passion, because I feel like these people have voices, and we don't listen to them. And until we create that space, it's just human beings suffering in incredible ways right in our backyards, basically. And so I am community liaison for Spokane Immigrants' Rights Coalition, which is an organization, a coalition of people who are working towards helping immigrants in Spokane. And I invite you all to, if you like, I'll share my email in the group chat, and you can send me an email back. And I think it's good to join our listserv because we, talk about immigration. And my background is also in psychology. I have a PhD in community psychology from North Carolina State University. But only now I really found real applied community work, which is what I wanted to do. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Zavala and Olga, for joining us. I feel really honored to be in this space today, so I appreciate y'all so much. Ava, I think you have the first question, so if you wouldn't mind kicking us off, I appreciate it.
All right. So often this issue is framed as one that primarily affects Latino/Latinx communities, and we know that this issue intersects with people from many different countries, backgrounds, and ethnicities. In Spokane, who are our undocumented communities, and where are these folks primarily? Where do they primarily come from?
And maybe we can start with Olga and Mariela.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Give me signals. I'm a talker. And so I try not to at the beginning. But where do they come from? Okay, so the majority, Spokane is an interesting city, different than other places I've lived in, because there is in my opinion, there's a large Hispanic community, but it's very dispersed. It has to do a little bit with the way that the city is formed and the neighborhoods are so different. So there are a lot of people in the city who are immigrants and first generation too, which is the group I'm mostly interested in. But it is spotty, like anywhere from Airway Heights to Spokane Valley, to the north, to the south, there is no majority in a specific area. Where do they come from? Again, very varied in that sense, because you have people who cross the border from the rural areas of Mexico to people who overstayed their visa from Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, to people who generationally were here and somehow are still undocumented, to people from rural areas of El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, everything. I've seen it all. I didn't think I've met too many people from Puerto Rico here, but actually a couple.
Thank you, Olga. Dr. Zavala, I'm not sure if you want to respond at all to this question, or if you have something to add here. I know that you're newer to this community, so wanted to give you an opportunity, but also no pressure.
Yeah, no, I was more interested in what Olga had to say on this, because of course I'm very new. I am here to learn as well about what the community here in Spokane specifically looks like.
Thank you, Dr. Zavala. I have the next question here. So we talk about barriers and challenges for folks, and I'm interested to hear from you, Olga. What barriers do folks living undocumented in the US face generally, but also here in Spokane? And what resources are most often needed in your experience working with folks? And then for Dr. Zavala, what barriers exist for our undocumented students? At Gonzaga, I know that I don't have the exact number. I think that that's not always public information, but I know that there have been undocumented students here at Gonzaga. So for our students, what are the barriers and what resources are most often needed from a higher education lens for folks living undocumented?
Who's gonna go first? Okay, so in Spokane, the barriers, a very big barrier that I see in the city, for example, compared to other places where I lived in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Madison, Wisconsin, where I learned a lot about how to serve. I was a student and I wanted to volunteer, and I taught undocumented people how to read and write and help them with their taxes and things like that. And that's what I did as a student. And that's how I learned a lot from organizations that were already established. And so that's the main lack in Spokane, that there is no one center or one place where if you are a member of the Latino community or speak Spanish, or even multicultural, like other ethnicities, they don't have this place where they know that they're understood, that the problems are understood, and then they can go and ask for help. There are a lot of services, really good services, like We're Relief, and local nonprofits that are of Latino background, online Facebook pages like Latinos in Spokane, MIA, Mujeres en Acción, for women, serving women, Raíz from Planned Parenthood, HBPA, Professional Business Association, but it's a little disjointed. And so unless you are empowered in the community and knowledgeable about how things work in the system, then you don't find out about these things. And it's like, I remember, I think it was the director of MIA that said, "And how did you find this information? Was it under a rug?" And I was like, it feels like that. It's like, and you have to be a really good reader and resourceful person to find out these things. And the intention is there, like the non-minority community wants to help, but it's like, how do we help? Because we don't know the language, we don't know how to communicate. And then we're not very used to people from other places in Spokane. So just people are, what I always argue, some people say is racism, and I'm like, let's not label it, but it could be, yes. or lack of understanding of other cultures. It's a lot of ignorance, and racism and ignorance go together. So it's hard to know if it's intentional or not. But I think that being so ignorant about it is a little intentional.
Thank you, Olga. Dr. Zavala.
Yes, so from the student perspective, two main areas come to mind, and of course, coming also from my own experiences throughout undergrad and graduate school, is one, financial resources, and then the second one is institutional support. Institutional meaning coming from university officials, faculty, deans, in that sense. So for financial resources, students, when it comes to funding their college education, if they're totally like no DACA, just undocumented students, to start with, they do not have access to federal financial aid. So then, doing this research with, looking under all kinds of rugs, like this community is so used to doing that kind of stuff. And so trying to create like hubs where people know that where they go, they will get information like this would be an invaluable thing for the community as a whole, and then students as well. Because these financial resources, students have to look to private grants, and scholarships, and then it varies as well. For my experiences in Texas, I had to apply for certain Texas funds coming from the state, and then other merit-based scholarships and other types of private scholarships that I had already had from being in high school, and like having good grades, being at the top of your class, all of those things. But it was just sort of like grabbing from here and there and just making it work, right? Looking under all of these rugs, finding your way, sometimes or oftentimes feeling very blind in the process. And then, of course, it also varies by state. So in California, there are other opportunities available for students depending on those state laws. So when students are even looking to get into graduate programs, even after Gonzaga, they'll have to be looking at this stuff too, right? Like, how does the state treat them as a person, right? And this leads me into the institutional support part, because with my very different experiences in institutions in Texas and California, I often share this part where I I just from reading an email that was an Undocu newsletter that is sent every week. So it was my first week at UC Irvine in my PhD program. And I received this Undocu newsletter that just included resources for undocumented students of, anything from just community support, groups when they're meeting. Our next meeting is here and there. And then there's there were resources for immigration questions as well. So they partnered up with professors in law who would help also with this with these types of questions related to immigration law. And then just to have it come from the university itself made such a huge difference to me. Like I was tearing up just reading an email, because compared to my experiences prior and feeling like you're just looking under a rug here and there, you're not made to feel like you're supposed to be there. You're not made to feel like you're welcome there, or, you just feel like you're getting by with, any cracks that you may find, right? And so it was just a huge difference from that very basic, just here's a hub of, a place for you that you can go to get information. We're acknowledging that you have these kinds of struggles that your peers may not see, right? So if you go to your friends, they might not really understand where you're coming from. And even from simple things such as filling out forms, just filling out applications raises so much anxiety, because everybody does the same form, but you don't have the right documents to submit with the form. You don't have the right information. You don't have the parents that you can call for, like, please help me out with this. So even just support with helping people through processes that they're not familiar with makes a huge difference. And for the ways that I've seen Gonzaga go about this kind of lies somewhere in the middle, where in like the Texas example, there was no institutional support. Anything that I saw where there were community groups, it was student-led, not institution-led. In California, it was totally different, because the institutions there we're starting to see a lot more and organize a lot more of these types of resources for students. So the institution itself had already gone through some changes when I went there first. And now being introduced to Gonzaga, and just because it's smaller as well, it seems that from my conversations with Dr. Raymond Reyes, Associate Provost and the Chief Diversity Officer, it seems that the intention is there, that people want to help, that people are, looking for different ways to help in like spaces like this that are trying to create this type of community. But I think it would really help to have this additional institutional backing from Gonzaga itself. And just like I said, because it matters also in how you're communicating to those students that, their hard work and everything that they're doing in school is not just because, by luck, like they deserve to be here, right? They, and oftentimes this ideas of imposter syndrome and everything that people go through for an undocumented community is just, it's oftentimes heightened, right? Where, I'm not supposed to be here. My existence itself is questioned, my taking up space, all of these things. So I would say those two things are the major struggles that students go through at the different levels, even from undergrad to grad. And I can speak more to like the specifics of like what you may need to look for in graduate programs and things like that. But I'll wait to hear how you want us to go in this conversation.
Wait, and I want to back up what Dr. Zavala is saying, because what she explained right here is exactly the same thing that happens in a larger picture in a city. It's the same is the same thing, that part of the institutional support, and meaning help would be easier if it comes from the city council or from the government or an institution that is specifically working, not just because you know someone and you got lucky that person helped you. And so the broader, the better, the easier, and the more people feel good. And so, yeah, thanks for summarizing.
Wow, thank you both. Ava, I know our next question is particularly about COVID, but I think that there's an opportunity here to pause for a second. If you could just overview Gonzaga's Dream Week and the Undocumented Community Support Coalition, because I think I'd like to ask a little bit more about what efforts we might take at Gonzaga, but then also in our community to combat that ignorance, right? To combat the ignorance in our community and on our campus, and maybe from our institution, around what is needed to really produce an inclusive community, right? So Ava, would you really quickly kind of go through those pieces real quick?
Of course. So today's episode is actually, as Anthony mentioned earlier, it's part of our Gonzaga's Dream Week, which is a week-long series of events hosted by the cultural club La Raza Latina. And it's meant to educate and cultivate solidarity with our undocumented students. This episode is also brought to you in collaboration with the Undocumented Community Support Coalition, or UCSC. And our Undocumented Community Support Coalition is a group of various campus partners and students who are coming together to work towards improving how Gonzaga supports our undocumented community members. In addition to supporting the well-being of undocumented people, UCSC recognizes that the effects of immigration reform impacts others beyond their immigration status. And in this, UCSC's support extends both undocumented Gonzaga community members in addition to community members who have friends and family members impacted by immigration.
Thank you, Ava. And I think I wanted to share that because Ava and I both sit on the Undocumented Community Support Coalition group. And I think we see that there have been these really wonderful attempts and some progress to support our undocumented community here on campus. And I think we both recognize there's so much work to be done. And so both of you, I think, really touched, Dr. Zavala and Olga, on this ignorance in the community, on walking into spaces that are not, the difference between walking to a space that is not made for you and all the signals are telling you it's not made for you, and versus walking into a space that feels inclusive. So in Spokane, on a college campus that is, I think, trying, but maybe not there yet, what could be done? What could be done to start to combat that ignorance and move us forward?
I think that we all, as human beings, need to when it has to do with immigration, we have to stop our double standards. Because a lot of people, I say we because the majority of us want to help and want to be nice. I believe that there is more nice people in the world that they're mean, really. But people are, I want to be nice, I want to be kind, I'm a Christian, I want to do good, but I don't want undocumented. And those two things okay, so that's a political thing. But then they go and eat in restaurants. We eat fruit, and who picks our fruit? We eat at restaurants, and who cooks our food? And we stay in hotels, and who cleans our rooms? Most of those people are undocumented people. So if you really don't like that, and you really don't want undocumented, then stop having the double standards, and then take out all that economy, that greatness that we have in this country, because we're using those people to be more comfortable. Like, how do we have boxes in Costco and all that? Is because somebody carries them there, So once we notice these things and say, I have all these things because there are other people that are making less than me and helping me be this comfortable in this country, then I need to do something about them. And so instead of having the double standard, that's what I have to say And yeah, I concluded this after many years. In some ways, I felt like I had that double standard too, until I had to look at my own beliefs about what does it really mean to move from one place to another one. Who does land belong to really? And we all want a little piece of land, you know, because we're in this world, but we have to be more generous about it. And I think the land belongs to everyone, and we have to make it good for everyone and human.
Anthony, to your question about what could be done further, like at Gonzaga, I think it would, of course, I'm not as familiar with the work that you and Ava are involved with and everything that you already do, but with just following what I was saying earlier, just having that sort of a hub where then other initiatives come out of, it would be like a big thing to look to, because even in partnerships with community members, that could be the central hub to go to, right? Partnerships with faculty members who want to help, who want to provide their expertise and support, they could go there, because just a lot of times also people are good and well-intentioned, but they don't know how to go about it, or they don't know where to get the information. If they would, you know, have a place that they could go and say, okay, they run workshops, or, you know, they visit, they have presentations on these topics, and we know exactly where to go and who to contact, then that would make it easier for people then from that hub sort of spread out with initiatives. And I had a brief conversation with Dr. Raymond Reyes, but I know the intention is there. It's just a matter of making it much more intentional and organizational, right? Like in an organized, systemic way to provide these resources for students and community members. And then that way, when you're trying to also reach the community, there's a place to go to, right? So when we have these partnerships with community members and people doing work around the campus, there's also a place, okay, this is where students can go and support those initiatives. Students that are not undocumented, right? Like also just allies, people who want to help.
Thank you, Dr. Zavala. And yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting. I've been part of the UCSC for a couple of years now, and it's had a few different iterations, and I think has built some momentum, but we're still kind of growing into that as a coalition. I know that Dr. Reyes, the Office of DEI campus kind of houses the UCSC in a lot of ways. And right now it's still not, we don't have there's not a physical space to go to. And knowledge about what we do, I don't think is as widespread as it could be, right? If people don't know, they don't come. So I think you're pointing to some good things there in our own work, and then more broadly at our institution. Ava, do you want to take our next question? Thank you.
Sure. So our next question is, how has the current pandemic affected the undocumented community generally, and how has it affected the community here in Spokane?
Okay, so today, I think it was today at a Twitter account I read that the good thing about 2020 is that we can blame everything on 2020. And it seems like that, so at the end of last year, in the fall of 2019, we started working. I started volunteering and then working as a truster messenger for the census 2020. And so we were reaching out to people, and I was volunteering as a CIRC member. And then we started doing this census outreach. And in the middle of the census outreach, COVID happened. On the interesting side is that because we were intentionally reaching more, then we were getting to people, and we were finding, the idea was to find people who were completely undocumented, that, like Dr. Zavala said, is like, you don't have a way to show documentation. So how do you do the census? I know it's 10 minutes, 10 questions, but if you don't know how to answer them, it takes an hour and it seems like 100 questions. And to just explain simple things as place of residency, you know. And so so we were reaching, I remember coming in February from one of the conferences, and we even went to Seattle without masks, and came back and found out that as soon as the lockdown happened, these people that I had helped with the census were reaching out to me, and they're like, how are we supposed to get food? And I was like, oh yeah, like, and a lot of these people lived, they're living by the day. So it's an hourly wage. And if you don't work 2 days is not a big deal, but if you stop 5 days, then you start seeing like, okay, that was half of rent. And then the other 5 days, that was food. And so then they were asking questions. And so we were in one of our meetings at CERC, and I said, well, I think that the money that is going to be, all we were doing before was if people needed, and by the way, this is good for people to know, that feel free to reach to me if you're doing paperwork with lawyers and you need a little assistance on like pay for a consultation fee. We don't have a ton of money, but we've helped people up to like $1,000 even when they need to do an emergency trip to another city because they have a court hearing. And so we were doing that, and I said, I think we're going to have to switch it to let's pay for rent. And at the same time, the government was giving US citizens a stimulus check, and these people were not going to get it. So we started by giving them $600 so that we wouldn't have families that couldn't pay for rent. And from then, I think 2020, of course, is terrible because a lot of people have died and because people are getting sick and because people are being hurt financially. But the positive aspect of it is that it highlighted problems that already existed. And to me, they were visible, but I was like, only I could see them working with these families. Now it was evident, like, oh, really? The ELL program in the school district is not working very efficiently. Duh. But now it's very obvious because now you see that the kid is not logging into the computer and it's not learning English, and it's like more obvious. Oh, that they didn't have a health insurance. We knew this. They didn't have health insurance, but now it's super obvious because now you have COVID and you can't be treated, things like that, or treated on time or diagnosed, whatever. So I think that COVID highlighted problems that were latent, that we knew that existed. And on the positive side, I think that now we're being more alarmed because it's so evident, and those are the people who are paying a higher price, in the sense that, for example, farm workers were the ones that were always working while we were all in shelter in place. And I happened to be interpreting in the medical field at the time, and I would ask them, hey, like, how are you at home? Staying at home? Staying? We get up at 4 a.m. and we work because you still have to pick up the crops, and where are you guys wearing masks? No. So it was very obvious that these problems were going to get bigger, and so yeah, that's, to me, 2020, terrible in many ways, but in many ways it also highlighted a lot of the current, or the problems that were happening before.
Thank you, Olga. Dr. Zavala, anything you'd like to add to that that line of questioning?
Also, I mean, I would just like to second all of that. That is basically covered most of this. And what I was thinking too, a lot of like what we've seen with COVID really just pulled the curtain wide open on things that were already there. And who's the people who, who were working the whole time? Everybody's panicking inside, and even through the fires, who's working those fields still? And yeah, to me, I agree on that. Like the realities of a lot of undocumented people and families, it's just more people are able to see the extent of what it means. Okay, people have no health insurance right now, where it's been a reality for many folks already that you just plan on not getting sick and that's it. And also planning like was mentioned right now, a lot of these families, they make their living day by day, and whatever jobs that they can take that pay cash, under the table. And as we've known for a while now, these things can get really dangerous. And when we talk about, like, we care about our students' safety, that should be a part of it. Like, this part of their identity doesn't go away. What kinds of jobs are they taking on? Who are they working for that they're paying them cash, money under the table, whatever jobs they can take? And if they exploit them, like, who's there for them, right? Because if you take the job, you're already feeling you're not supposed to be working in that whatever job that you take. They say, okay, we're not going to pay you. So who do you go to, right? If we're really, concerned about these things, and we're talking about, building the whole character of our students and focused on, them thinking about, ethical questions out in society and the social good, we also have to be thinking about these questions outside of the student identity, right? Like, what else are they dealing with?
Thank you, Dr. Zavala. Real quick, I'm realizing that Graciela Romero is in the room here with us, and Graciela, I believe, is from the Comunidad de Cristiana de Spokane, a faith community here, and wanted to give a chance to welcome you into the space, Graciela, and maybe, if you'd like, to share a little bit about your community as well.
Hello. Sorry, I came in a little bit late. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is a lot of interesting information. Obviously, we have a lot of span of people, lots of, I'm sure, not that everything is out there or people are talking about it, right? But we have a lot of, that's all we're made of, Latinos. So yeah, I mean, this is interesting because of the fact that that I don't think it's talked about too much. And we have had some people come and I think talk to certain people about just what's going on. But this is definitely just good information for me to talk to. I know there's students and maybe I think that everybody's good or just because a lot of it is not, but I'm sure, I'm sorry that Pastor couldn't be here because he just kind of said, go to the meeting and see what, I mean, hopefully, you can kind of glean off of just other people. But it's really interesting. I'm having a great time listening to you guys just kind of, because these are great, I mean, it sounds like great resources and stuff that people that are really going on that I had no clue about. So just really, really interesting. But yeah, so we have probably, about 250, maybe a little bit more of Hispanic people coming to our church. So it's, undocumented, obviously documented, it's not, but it's interesting to hear how much a struggle there is for obviously our youth. So yeah, so it's good to be here.
Thank you, Graciela, appreciate it. And we just wanted to highlight y'all's work as well as a faith community here in Spokane that does work very closely with our Latino community, Latinx community here in Spokane. There's a lot of intersections to what we're talking about today. So appreciate you for sharing that a little bit. We have about 15 minutes left. If you guys are still down for a few more questions. Ava, I know that I had you do the next one, but I think I'll do number 5. You could finish us up. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. So for Olga and Dr. Zavala, we talked a little bit about allyship as well. That was mentioned, I think, 2 questions ago. So for Gonzaga students who are looking to connect, to show support, to learn more, to do the work that's required to be an ally, how would you guide them to become more involved?
That's a good question. I think an important thing that I actually learned while doing this work and being part of the Spokane Immigrants' Rights Coalition, it was how important it was to reaffirm undocumented people of their rights. And so, and it's as simple as I have flyers all the time with me, and I have and yeah, and the American ACLU has brochures and flyers in many languages that you can give to your community. And I think it's very important because people, similar to what Dr. Zavala has said, they feel bad about being here and they don't feel they're doing the right thing. They even call themselves, illegal. And I'm like, hold on, that's not how you use that word. You're undocumented and here are your rights. And once they realize as human beings, they have rights in this country, and it varies from state to state, but the state of Washington is very, very progressive, then they feel more empowered and they realize, and I always tell them, if it feels wrong, it's likely wrong. It's not you. Because a mom who doesn't know how to read, who doesn't know how to write, and she says, I don't think my kid is learning online. I see that he's rocking in his chair and that the teacher is not in. Do you think that's okay? And I'm like, if it feels wrong and it looks wrong, it's probably wrong. But she doesn't feel empowered to say. So I go with her and talk to the counselor at the school, and sure enough, it was wrong. The school should know where there's some little dynamics there that we could work on, all of us. But the mom wasn't empowered to speak in the name of these and their children, because of language barriers, because of educational barriers, because of everything. And so so that's one thing, that to know your rights, and then the more people know their rights, the more they help other undocumented people among themselves, and they say, well, these are things that you can get and may not be able to get, or services that you can get or not. So that's one that comes really fast to my head.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Like, it matters so much. I've been in that position where I've been just so incredibly, like, going through periods of like real depression. And then I have a conversation with someone and they're just talking about my own basic rights, and just remembering those moments where I was at that time in my life and everything. Is just seeing both people from this undocumented community, but then also allies who are, helping people, providing people these resources, the information from the ACLU, just holding community workshops where they help folks fill out the DACA applications, or get funding to fill out those applications for whatever it is. It just makes a huge difference if you're an ally and you want to help in some way, even with these like basic reminders of your basic rights. Here are the information that we got from this community member, or this center at Gonzaga. That matters, because here's a person who is not undocumented telling me it's okay to be who you are, right? Your existence doesn't justify violence against you, oppression. And it matters because it's not just, right, like your mom telling you, come on, Mija, you can go, keep going, right? It's somebody who you view as, if you view as yourself as like illegitimate, right? If you view as somebody as legitimate, as part of the system, saying, yeah, you have those same rights that I do, right? As a human being, it matters a lot. And so as an ally, I would say, don't think that, just your work here and there, just helping maybe people go fill out a form, goes unnoticed, or it's such a small thing, because it really matters a lot for a person that has seen no other support, right? Or has themselves had to look for cracks and crannies here, and just blindly moving through systems, right?
And I will add to that, for example, for your school organization, the best thing is to, well, inform yourself and partner. ACOU is very open in the state of Washington. I forgot to mention, and this is where I read and learned a lot about WISN. I can send the link. And the link for WISN is Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network. And they're the ones, for example, that advocated in the state to have the Washington COVID-19 Immigrant Relief Fund that is going to give $1,000 to immigrants applying, to undocumented immigrants applying right now until December 6th. And so that's, for example, I'm helping people do the applications full time. That's what I'm doing. And I get, texts at all times of the day because people work. And so sometimes they can only do the application on Saturday at 10 p.m., and so partnering with these organizations, partnering with organizations in the city, I feel like, and in general minority communities, and I've spoken to African-American communities and to Native American communities, and it's very normal and at the same time depressing. People want to have, be recognized in their leadership. And I see how that's, of course, our egos are awesome. We want to put them out there and say how wonderful we are, but it's not about us, it's about these people. And so we have to partner and not try to look for the recognition so much about how good am I doing for the community, because it's the work of all of us. It doesn't matter if I help 10 people, it only matters if I help 10 people and then all of you guys that were listening to this also help 10 people more, and the only way you find out is if we all work together and I give you all the information I know and you give me all the information because I can't help the Gonzaga students without knowing. I hadn't even thought about that there were undocumented students at Gonzaga, so all these things are important. And so I recommend signing in and volunteering for WISN and for Northwest Immigrants' Right Project, that I actually know that the Gonzaga Law School partners with them. And I'm trying to talk to them so that we all partner together, because if it's disjointed, then some people get more help than others instead of a more holistic way of helping everyone, because it is possible. I think this country has the resources. We're just not organized enough.
Wow. Thank y'all. Ava, would you like to ask our last question?
Of course, yeah. So our last question for today is, particularly at a time like this, we think it's important to highlight the positive things happening in our community. Where have you found hope in your work or in your community? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, where have you found hope in your work or in your community?
So conversations like this give me a lot of hope. I promise you, Anthony and Ava, I came here to to Spokane in 2006, and I probably wanted to have the same conversation, and I didn't have the space. There wasn't anybody that wanted to listen to it. So the fact that this is happening and that you guys are listening and that I can be myself and say exactly what I think about immigration is just wonderful. It is a step the right way, and it takes time. So I've learned in life to be patient, but the urgency in politics brings, like, a lot of people is like, oh, what do you think about what, depending on this president or that president, what do you think? And I was like, when it comes to immigration, it doesn't matter who's in power. They've always been left aside, and so we have to continue the work, and we always have to make this topic relevant to everyone, educate people, and understand that we don't need to send money to help children in Africa or in Syria. Of course, they probably need a lot of help, but right around the corner here, we have similar or worse problems. And so it's in our backyard, and we have to solve those problems before we can solve the bigger problems in the world. And so that gives me hope. It gives me hope that through all this COVID thing, a lot of the families have had to learn a lot of technology. And I just feel so empowered for them when a lady's like, I never went to school, but I can send you an email. And I'm like, yes, and with that email, she can communicate now with the teachers, and it forces her to do it faster, And of course, it's verbal and they still need to read and write, but at least there is like that graphic or that sound, or they sign up for Zoom and they did it on their phone and their kids helped them. And so, yeah, that gives me a ton of hope. And seeing Dr. Zavala and seeing Ava gives me a ton of hope too, because, and Anthony, I don't know what your background is, but I always work with these families and see the little kids that they are with. And I always say, I ask them, what do you want to do? And some of them hate school and they're like, I don't know, work. And I'm like, but still, that's going to be the dude that is going to be working 10 years from now. But there's a little girl that I always go visit, and she goes, I just want to be a lawyer. And I was like, I can't imagine the day that lady will be a lawyer and she will see how to defend the rights of people like her mom. And that gives me a ton of hope.
Absolutely. Yes. Spaces like this give me a ton of hope, especially being new to this community and really knowing what to expect. This definitely gives me a lot of hope that there's people, wanting these things to happen, wanting to have support for students and outreach in the community. Even though our political sphere might look crazy and we constantly have all these messages in the media of how much our rights matter or don't matter at all, even when things may seem so crazy out there in the world, seeing so many people, so many communities, and people down in the ground working in their specific communities with people one-on-one or small groups like this, even if it's not, they don't have big organizations and systems in place yet, there's people out there working with each other, helping each other. And that gives me hope, seeing their stamina, right? Their energy, because it gets really exhausting at times, to keep hearing all of these messages out there, but then seeing people like you, Anthony, Ava, trying to focus on, okay, what are we doing on the ground and how are we contributing to making it better? That is definitely something gives me hope and gives me more energy and optimism for sure.
Man, oh man. Thank y'all so much. Ava, do you have anything else that's on your mind that you want to ask or share? I want to give you the opportunity to.
No, I just really want to thank you, Anthony, Dr. Zavala, and Olga for coming today and speaking with us. I think that as a student at the university right now and being a part of our undocumented community support group, it really is hard to find like traction and trying to find a direction and how to get our word out to the community and how to support our community. But I think that I've learned a lot from you two today, and it's really, really motivated, inspired me to continue this fight and to continue looking for new resources and reaching out to other communities and people, because like you said, the resources are there. You just have to look for it. You have to go for it. You have to reach out to people. And it's really amazing to hear from you two today. So thank you once again.
Thank y'all. And I would just say, there are so many efforts, I think, or not so, there are efforts happening across the university. There are so many efforts happening in our community. And I would want to, I'm going to put the website and our email for the Undocumented Community Support Coalition in the chat here. For students on campus who are looking for a place to go, a place to connect to, we are one of those resources here on campus. And we are interested in connecting with you all as our students. But if students are just interested in getting connected at all with this really important issue, with members of this community, please reach out to us that way as well. We'd love to have you be part of this coalition and help us do our work better than it's happening now, because I think that there's so much room to grow. So Dr. Zavala and Olga, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Any last words from you all? I don't want to take up all the air in the room.
Just thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, I appreciated this too. Thank you so much. And for having it, and let us know, send me the link to make it. I have a Facebook that it was from an old radio show that I have. I wasn't brave enough to have a group on Facebook because that's too much work. But I do have it there, a few followers, and then after I post it there, I can share it to other local Facebook pages, and it's good for the for some families to listen to it, although not in Spanish.
That's a great point, Olga. That's a great point. Wow.
We can do one in Spanish one.
We could do this better too. Yeah, no, that's an amazing point and a good critique of where we are, right? So
Right.
maybe we do some.
Too.
Yeah. Maybe we do some transcription at the very least for the video so that folks can at least read it, and maybe it plays in the closed captioning or something like that at the very least. But wow, what a wonderful, sobering point to end on. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Ava, for co-hosting.
Gracias.
Gracias a todos. Thank you.
Gracias a todos.